It was not rain that slicked the windows of the legendary studio restaurant that afternoon. It was polished expectation. It was the thick, humid air of Hollywood, where reputation is the only currency and silence is the most dangerous weapon. The room was cold, despite the velvet upholstery and the warm amber lighting. At the center of this staged opulence, two men sat separated by a chasm wider than generations. On one side, the legend, Clint Eastwood, a figure carved from granite and dust. The quiet, weathered geometry of a man who didn't just play the tough guy. He defined him. His face held the map of 100 forgotten deserts. He was watching the room, but seeing history. Opposite him, Julian Thorne, the director of the moment, young, sharp, dripping in the synthetic sheen of modern success. Julian represented the new Hollywood, abstract, intellectual, fearful of anything that wasn't perfectly focus grouped. He wore expensive theory like armor. Julian had been talking for 20 minutes, a relentless, high-pitched analysis, dissecting the perceived flaws of classic cinema. He spoke of toxic nostalgia, of simplistic moral codes, of outdated machismo. He spoke of Eastwood's legacy itself. "It's beautiful," Julian declared, gesturing with manicured precision, his voice echoing slightly in the sudden, nervous quiet of the dining area. "But it's paper. It's a caricature of toughness. This idea that one man can stand against the odds, that violence solves anything. It's irresponsible fantasy, Mr. Eastwood. We know better now. Life isn't a Western. It's complicated. It requires nuance, dialogue, safe spaces." Julian paused for effect, expecting deference, expecting the old man to nod along to the progressive lecture. Eastwood did not move. He did not blink. His eyes, blue and deep as high mountain lakes, were fixed entirely on Julian, not with anger, but with the devastating quiet gaze of a man watching a laboratory mouse try to explain the ocean. The air tightened. Every server, every lurking producer, every nervous industry executive felt the compression. This was not a professional critique. This was a direct generational challenge. Julian pressed his attack, emboldened by the legend's silence. "I mean, look at your iconic characters, sir. They never talk. They just react. They rely on brute force, on archaic, instant justice. They are relics. Beautiful, yes, but ultimately, utterly disconnected from the real danger people face today." The silence that followed was immense. It swallowed Julian's self-satisfied smirk whole. Eastwood slowly lowered his glass of iced tea. The clink against the saucer was the loudest sound in the entire restaurant. He leaned forward just slightly. His voice, when it finally came, was low, gravelly. It cut through the polished air like razor wire. "You talk about real danger," Eastwood began. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You talk about it in air conditioning. You read about it on Twitter. You build elaborate scenarios of consequence and risk, then film them through 3 layers of protective glass." He paused. Julian tried to interject, to defend his thesis, but the old man's presence was a physical block. "You understand the idea of conflict. You understand the theory of justice," Eastwood continued, his eyes drilling into Julian. "But you don't understand the weighty of it." He shifted his posture. The movement was economical, precise. Every muscle memory of action ingrained in the man for 70 years seemed to suddenly activate. "I've met your kind of danger, son. The kind that doesn't announce itself with a trigger warning. The kind that comes out of the shadows, dirty and scared, with nothing to lose." This was the core of the attack. Julian, who lived in the world of theoretical threat, was being confronted by a man who understood the geometry of immediate survival. Eastwood's jaw tightened. He recalled, without mentioning it explicitly, the stories the room knew, of the quiet moments when real thugs, high on false confidence, had tried to cross his family, his granddaughter, mistaking silence for weakness. They mistook the calm exterior for an absence of capability. They made a fatal, rapid assessment error. "You talk about nuanced dialogue solving real problems," Eastwood said, his voice laced with the heavy iron of authority. "When a man is trying to hurt the people you love, or steal the breath out of you, there is no nuance. There is only the gap between intention and prevention." His phrase, when it landed, was devastatingly simple. It shattered the director's world of complex critique and intellectual safe zones. "The difference between us, Julian," Eastwood stated, resting his hand flat on the table, a gesture that demanded immediate attention, "is that you critique the fight. I know how fast the gun clears the holster." The silence that returned was absolute. It was the sound of a microphone being ripped out of the wall. Julian Thorne's entire carefully constructed intellectual framework collapsed instantly. He was a man holding a philosophy degree, suddenly confronted by a grizzled veteran who knew the battlefield intimately. The color drained from Julian's face. He had been so focused on the idea of toughness, he forgot what real, lived experience looked like. The room understood. Eastwood wasn't defending his movies. He was defending the need for competence, for grounded capability, in a world desperate to replace action with articulation. The legend didn't wait for a response. He simply nodded, a dismissal heavier than any shouted insult, and rose. Every eye followed him as he walked slowly, deliberately, out of the restaurant and back into the harsh daylight of the real world. The moment immediately went viral, not just in the room, but through the channels of whispers and leaks that define Hollywood. The footage, or the myth of the footage, of the polished critic being demolished by 3 seconds of pure, unfiltered wisdom spread like wildfire. The critique wasn't about movies anymore. It was about the modern delusion, the belief that observation equals experience, that complexity is superior to clarity, that safety can be theorized into existence. The world devoured the moment. They saw a man who had earned his place, dismantle a man who had only earned a platform. It was a potent, necessary reminder that while talk is easy, carrying the actual weight of responsibility demands quiet, lethal competence. It demands the readiness to act. It proved that sometimes the simplest truths hit the hardest. They are the ones forged not in a writer's room, but in the unforgiving crucible of life itself. The world needs more people like this. Share if you agree.